want you to look where I'm standing. Behind me are thousands of pools cut into the side of this mountain. They're white. They've been here for over 500 years. Before the Spanish came, before most of the cities that you know existed, the wild part, nobody dumps salt into these pools. There's a spring up the mountain, a hidden stream of water so heavy with minerals, you can't drink it. It runs down through these channels and it fills these terraces. And then the sun does the rest. The water leaves and what's left behind is salt. The families here have worked these same pools for generations. Grandfather to father, father to son. They didn't invent the salt. They didn't manufacture it. They just learned to let it be drawn out of the water that was already flowing. I want you to hold that picture for a moment because Jesus said something similar to this. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, Jesus is on a hillside and he's talking to ordinary people, fishermen, farmers, people who've never been picked for anything. And he looks at them and he says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt should lose its taste, how can it be made salty? It's no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled on by men. And not you should try to be, not if you work hard enough, maybe one day you'll become salt." He says you are salt, present tense, already true. And I think that's the first thing I don't want us to miss, standing in a place like this. Salt isn't something you achieve. It's something you already carry because of the source that the water came from. Now, why salt, right? Why not gold? Why not light? Well, Jesus, he gets to the light later. But in the ancient world, salt was survival. See, there was no refrigeration. You catch a fish, you kill a lamb, and within a day, it starts to rot unless you salt it. Salt was the one thing standing between a family and decay, between food and famine. And so when Jesus calls you salt, the first thing he's saying is you are meant to slow the rot. You are, wherever you are, in your home, your job, your town, there's decay happening. Relationships going bad, hope going soft, people quietly giving up. And God's plan for that decay is not an angel, it's you. Rubbed into a situation just like salt into meat. You're not called to escape the broken places. You're called to be pressed into them. Salt does nothing sitting in a jar. The second thing salt does, and anybody who cooks knows this, salt doesn't taste like itself. Salt brings out the taste that's already in the food. You don't eat a steak and think, salt. You think, man, that's a great steak. The salt disappeared into it and made everything else taste like what it was always supposed to taste like. And that's what you are in a room. A Christian who's working right, living right, doesn't make everything about themselves. They make the room better, more honest, more hopeful. They bring out the good that was buried under everybody's exhaustion and fear. People should walk away from us saying, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I can breathe around them. You're not the meal. You're the thing that makes the meal taste like the kingdom. And here's the catch. Just a little does a lot. You don't need a microphone or a stage or 10,000 followers. A pinch of salt seasons a whole pot. One faithful person seasons a whole family, a whole company, a whole village like the ones up this valley. But Jesus doesn't stop on the encouragement. He turns and he gives a warning that should make all of us go quiet. He says, if the salt should lose its taste, it's no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled on. Now, pure salt can't actually lose its saltiness, but the salt people used back then, it wasn't pure. It was scraped from deposits mixed with sand and chalk and dirt. And over time, the salt could actually leach out or wash away, and you'd be left with a white powder that looked like salt, felt like salt, sat in the jar like salt. But it couldn't do a single thing that salt is supposed to do. And so they just threw it out on the road and it got walked on. Gowan, here's, I think, the most dangerous place a person can live. Not far from God, not openly rebellious. I think the most dangerous place is almost salt. Looks the part, knows the songs, sits in the chairs, but the thing that was supposed to be drawn out of them is like it leaked out somewhere along the way, and they're just taking up space on the shelf. I think so many of us have lived close enough to that to know how quiet it is when it happens. It's not a blowout, it's a slow leak. A little bitterness, a little, I'll get serious about God later. And one day you reach for the salt and there's nothing left in it but the shape of who you used to be. Don't get walked on. You were made for the meat and the meal, not the road. So how do you keep your savor? How do you stay salty? Look at these pools with me. The families here, they didn't create the salt. They couldn't. All they did was keep the channel open to the spring. And as long as the water from that source kept flowing in, the salt kept coming. See, the day the spring dries up, every pool on this mountain goes empty. And see, you and me, we're not the source. We're the pool. Our saltiness doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from staying connected to the source, to the spring that's flowing down the mountain from a cross and an empty tomb. And so we have to stay connected. Stay in the Word. Stay on your knees. Stay rubbed into the lives of real people. Keep the channel open to the source, to the Holy Spirit, who will keep doing in you what you could never manufacture on your own. And so I'm standing on 500 years of salt that nobody manufactured. It was drawn out pool by pool, day by day, by a source up the mountain and a sun that wouldn't quit. And I think that's the invitation today, not to become something you're not, but to finally be what Jesus already declared you to be. You are the salt of the earth. So go get in the pot, get rubbed into the wound, get pressed into the place everybody else is running from. Bring out the flavor, slow the rot, and keep that channel wide